Okay, so please excuse the terrible quality of the video, but I'm going to go through part B and C of question 6 on the biology, question 7 on assignment 6 biology. So we've got the family tree for this family and their blood types. So essentially the key thing when you've got a family tree or a pedigree diagram is to look for the recessive phenotypes and fill in their genotypes. So the phenotype blood group O can only be caused by OO. Okay, we write it like this. There's certain things that we write like this superscript to a letter. It's to do, generally we do it with codominant substances for various reasons, but nobody will mind if you write it like this, especially at GCSE level. So what we're going to do is we're going to fill in these anytime there's recessive. So fill in the genotype of any recessive individuals. Now with codominance, we have also got the codominant phenotypes, which obviously then have a codominant genotype. So we can also fill in these genotypes here. Okay, now the trouble is when we get to these guys have a dominant genotype, which means that there are multiple different ways that you can, they have a dominant phenotype, which means that there are multiple different genotypes that can cause them. To get B, for example, you could get BB, or you could have BO. Okay, because the O allele can be suppressed by the more dominant B allele, and therefore it would just appear to be B. The O would completely sort of disappear or be completely silenced. The same with A. You could either have AA or you could have AO. Okay, now the way to work out which one is which of these individuals is actually heterozygous, is by looking at either the parents or the offspring. Now here, this person, G2, grandparent 2, has only got O alleles. Okay, so that means she must pass on an O allele to her offspring. This person must have an O allele. Okay, their dominant allele would be A, but they must also have an O allele because of their mother, sorry. So if we look at parents, we find a recessive parent, a parent with a recessive phenotype, then we know that their offspring must be that any offspring with a dominant phenotype must be heterozygotes. Okay. On the other hand, if we have any people with offspring which are recessive, so let's say, for example, totally new example, but let's say, for example, we get someone with the blood group O, and let's say that one's A, just for no particular reason. Now let's say the parents are A and A, because their offspring is blood group O, is recessive, that offspring must have received 2 alleles of O. They must have got 1 allele from this parent and 1 allele from this parent, okay? So both parents must be heterozygotes. Okay, so as you can see, you can recognise heterozygotes by looking at the parents and by looking at the offspring and finding any recessives in the parents and offspring. So the question says C1, C2 and P2, what are their genotypes? So by writing in all of the ones that we can figure out, we've already got a step ahead of ourselves. So C1, it must be AB because that's the only way you can get the phenotype AB. So I'm going to write it properly down here. I've just written it not imperfectly, let's say, on here just for notes. Now they want to know about C2. Now C2 is type A, and we know that they must have got the A allele from parent 1. Now, parent 2, we haven't been able to see if parent 2 has got any recessive offspring or parents. However, if this person had an A allele to pass on, we know this one's got an A allele from here, but if this person had an A allele to pass on, then their phenotype would express that as well. If this person had any A alleles to pass on to their offspring, then they would be AB, type AB. So they must have passed on something that wasn't an A. If they had passed on a B to this offspring, then that child would also be AB. So they must have passed on an O, which also means that this person must have an O, okay? Because it can't have passed a B on to that child, and that child cannot have inherited an A from parent 2. So that answers both our questions. Because they wanted to know about parent 2 and about child 2. So parent 2 must be BO and child 2 must be AO. Okay. Now the next part of it is, what is the chance that the next child born to the parent, so another sibling, would have the blood group O? Use a genetic diagram to explain this, and a genetic diagram in general means a Punnett square. Now Punnett squares are a fantastic tool, and you should generally use them for any situation where you're asked to describe the probability of getting a certain feature. So if we're looking at the parents, now we know that the parents must be AO and BO. Okay, so we'll write AO and BO, or you can write it as AO and BO, like that. Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to see the different possible combinations of all the possible combinations of alleles. Okay, so we draw out something essentially the same as a noughts and crosses board. Okay, and we'll write one of the parents' alleles up here and one of the parents' alleles down the side. Okay, and then what we do is we show the combination of those in these squares inside. It shows, because let's say this is the sperm and this is the eggs, this shows all possible combinations of all possible sperms and eggs. Okay, so this one would have an A sperm and a B egg. This one would have an O sperm and a B egg, and so on and so forth. Okay, and so finally you can now see that this is the only possible offspring that would have the O phenotype. So that is a 25% chance of having an offspring with blood group O. Okay, so hopefully that clears a little bit of that up. This is a very difficult topic. Make sure you use plenty of Punnett squares, even if you just have to scribble it down in the corner of your piece of paper. It's still very worth doing, because sometimes they won't give you enough space to draw a full genetic diagram, but it's still worth scribbling one on the side here. And remember that when you're trying to find out whether a person is heterozygous or not, when they have a dominant phenotype, always look for their parents and their offspring and see if there are any recessive ones. Obviously with blood types, as we saw here, it's a little bit more complicated than that because of the codominance issue, but that always gives you a good starting point. And then as long as you keep thinking of the fact that each person is going to get one allele from each parent, you can think about whether it's possible to get like blood type AA, genotype AA, or genotype AO, for example. Let your tutor know if you have any other questions, and good luck.